So I would tell anybody that's going to get in a niche market like this is go all in. Like make your website, make your email marketing, make your Facebook pages or your LinkedIn messengers or anything like that. Like make them niche from the beginning and use lingo from the industry, use little clues and little things that show that you cared enough to learn enough about that industry to put those details in your communications. Learn how to compare different parts of your processes to what they do in theirs. Like I have a million different ways to compare the financial planning process to nuclear power, like all kinds of things that are just kind of metaphors that people like that will easily click, right? So just go all in and don't expect immediate results because it does take time for that message to come across clearly.
This is the Future Ready Advisor, a show about transforming your financial advisory practice. I'm your host, Sam Sivarajan, a wealth management consultant, behavioral scientist, and keynote speaker. In this podcast, I dive deep into the real challenges advisors face and bring you insightful conversations with top industry experts. Together, we'll explore practical strategies grounded in behavioral science to help you better serve your clients, optimize your time, and build a future-ready practice. Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Sam Sivarajan. Welcome to today's episode of the Future Ready Advisor. Joining me today is Ryan Townsley, founder and lead advisor at Town Capital. Now, Ryan has a fascinating background, transitioning from a career as a senior reactor operator in the nuclear power industry to becoming a financial advisor. He now runs a thriving practice exclusively serving nuclear power plant professionals, a true, unique niche. With over $110 million of assets under management, Ryan brings deep expertise in retirement income and tax planning while demonstrating the power of targeted, specialized advising in building a successful practice. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate the intro. Good to be here.
Very nice to have you. And I think it's a very timely and interesting topic of the whole idea of focusing on a niche. Now, you've had, as per the intro, you had a pretty unique career path before founding Town Capital, including, as I mentioned, working as a senior reactor operator in the nuclear power industry. Now, just to set the stage, what inspired you to transition from such a technical role to a broader financial advisory role?
It's a great question, Sam. And it wasn't something that I envisioned, when I first started my journey in nuclear power. I thought I would do that forever. And I started in the U.S. Navy, in the Navy nuclear power program. I spent 6 years in there, finished my undergraduate degree while I was in the Navy in nuclear engineering technology. And then I got out and I worked at Salem Nuclear Power Plant for about 2 years. And then I went to my final place I worked in nuclear power, which was Peach Bottom Atomic Power Station in Pennsylvania. And for me, like getting a senior reactor operator license, which is kind of like the highest, I would consider it the highest credential you can get in the industry. It means that you're licensed by the government to operate the reactor, and all of the millions of people that live around the plant count on you to do it safely.
Right.
So they can live in peace and harmony. But really for me, it was, I caught an interest in it when I went back to get my master's degree in finance. And the only reason I picked finance is because it wasn't engineering. I just wanted it to be different. I wanted it to be, I had to use my GI Bill for something from the Navy. It was going to expire, right, if you don't use it within 10 years. So I went back. I wanted to get something different. So I was looking at business. I was looking at finance. So I got an MBA in finance. I kind of combined the two. And I just would say that I just caught the bug for it. And I realized, I said, I may have told my wife, I was like, I may have picked the wrong career when I was talking about nuclear power. And so I started to teach myself everything, and not beyond the master's degree. Is I read every book, you name it. I did every possible thing you could do just to increase my knowledge. And then Sam, like, it just kind of naturally progressed to, at 2:00 in the morning on a night shift at a nuclear power plant, there's not much to talk about. So you talk about money, you talk about retirement, you talk about all these fun things, traveling and, what you're going to do and, in the future. And I remember one really well-respected reactor operator who worked there. And he said, well, if you decide to do this for a living, I'll be your first client. And then I just did. And he lived true to that word. And then it all worked out from there. So it really was purely a passion. It was, nuclear power is a great job. I could have worked there forever. I just happened to find something that I loved
More.
And I do that every day now.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I mean, obviously, I can see how that technical skills that you would bring and that analytical approach that you would have had in your first career as a nuclear reactor operator lends itself to be a financial advisor. And I think if you can marry the two, as you seem to have done, to service and serve clients that are in that industry, you can speak their language and address their needs and everything else. And you seem to have married that quite well. Now, the interesting point, and I'd love to explore this with you, is that focusing on a niche feels, I think, counterintuitive in our industry that often prizes broad client bases. And I'd love you to talk about that a bit. What made you choose this niche? What your experience has been, and what advice that you have for listeners that why you think that targeting a niche has been a winning strategy for you, and what other advisors might take from your experience.
Sure. I wish, Sam, I could say that I had like this profound insight that the niche would work from the beginning, but I didn't. When I first started the company, I had a sailboat on the website. It was very generic. And my thought process, well, I'm still going to try to attract all of my former colleagues and people like that from nuclear power, but I don't want to exclude anyone.
Right.
At this point, who am I to turn away business when I have no business?
Exactly.
Just remember, I was starting relatively fresh, no experience, no book of business, not coming from the industry, not moving from another firm, literally a career changer. So I started with a very generic website, a very generic message and things, and it just didn't work. And the reason why is, why would anyone pick me, nuclear engineer or not? Why would somebody pick me to be their financial advisor when I just got into the business? Like, what differentiates me?
Right.
So just doing research on, the number of nuclear power employees that are in the country, the number of active sites and how many employees per country. And this, I quickly realized I couldn't serve all them if I wanted to. So why not just focus my attention on that subset when, even a small fraction of just that community would be plenty to have a really nice business. So I decided to change. I completely revamped the website, the message and everything. And really, Sam, what focusing on this niche has done is it's allowed, you can just, your marketing can be clever, your message can be tailored. You can use keywords and phrases that take people right back to when they were working 5-10 years ago. And, there's a little nostalgia with that, right? You can completely build your entire business message, your, what you want to achieve, how you communicate with your clients, the methodology that you do to do their financial planning around the skills and everything that they're used to, right? I'll give you a really great example is if you imagine that engineers love detail, nuclear engineers are just at a whole nother level, right? They love charts, they love graphs. We're taught to ask why, we're taught to question, we're not taught to follow. You have to follow a procedure,
Right.
but you always have a questioning attitude where if you get to a step in a procedure and it doesn't feel right, the best thing to do is stop and ask questions, right?
Right.
And that transfers over to this job more than I ever thought it could. Working with retirees mostly, or soon to be retirees in from the nuclear power industry, they want to see the what ifs. They want to see the contingencies. What if we have a bad market? What if we do? Because we're just, conditioned and taught to do that. And I don't know if a lot of advisors would want to work in that level of detail because most of the clients they're working with might not have that kind of mindset, right? So it's really nice to have a group of like-minded people where I can present in a particular level of detail, where I can present, probably beyond what the average person would want to see with regards to the numbers and the math and what goes behind the scenes. So I just love that. I think that aspect of it makes it really unique.
That makes total sense. And one of the things that you said that really kind of resonates with me is this realization that even when you look at the niche, that niche is bigger than what you could possibly hope to serve, right? And I think that's the point that I mean about it being counterintuitive, that if you can narrow your focus and tailor your messaging to that niche market, not only do you stand out, you're going to have more business than you can possibly handle, right? Now, I understand being able to speak the lingo. I understand being able to have similar personalities or approaches to your clients that they have. What do you think when you decided to focus on this niche, what made your message resonate with that target audience? What made him say, okay, you know what, this Ryan guy sounds like the person I want to talk to look after my financial future?
Yeah, there's a couple things there, Sam, and I think one of them is maybe just the fact that they know that I know what they went through to build their wealth. I think that means a lot. And nuclear power is not an easy job.
Okay.
It's a 24/7 operation. For much of my time in nuclear power, I worked rotating shift work. So it's night shift, day shift, night shift, day shift, holidays, weekends, Christmas, Thanksgiving, you name it. It's a 24/7. Unlike a coal plant, you can't turn it off. It's never off, right? It's also there's little tolerance for mistakes, as there should be, right? Obviously mistakes happen, but it's just a very low threshold for, what's acceptable or not. It's just a very accountable type of industry. We're talking about most nuclear power plants are older technology. So there's a challenge with getting parts and troubleshooting and things. It's just a hard job to work in. Now it compensates appropriately for that, right? So, it pays very well. So I'd recommend any engineers out there listening, go nuclear power, right? But it's not an easy job. So I think someone being able to relate to you versus the average financial advisor that may not know, what does it take? What did it take to build this wealth and work in this industry for 30, 40 years for somebody who is soon to be retired? I think that means something. Another thing is the industry has, being a utility, some specifics when it comes to pensions and retiree healthcare benefits and all kind of other things that are just, I actually had those benefits, right? So I probably would say I
You
understand
understand it.
very well, right? So navigating around those different choices for people that are retiring from the industry, I think is really important. And then just little things like I run a Facebook group, and the Facebook group is just literally to post educational content, like about Social Security and about retirement income and annuity versus non-annuity, or just basic topics. And it's for nukes only, and it's called Critical Finance. And if you've heard that name, you would think that critical meant important
Right.
finance, right? Where it's really critical is when a nuclear reactor is operating, where the net ins of fission is the same as the net out of fission. That's basically when you're operating instability. So anyone who saw that who's not a nuke may think one way, but if you see it in your nuke, you probably chuckle and you
Double entendre, right?
be
It's
drawn
yeah.
toward it, right? So just I'd say big and little things like that combined that just make speaking directly to this audience in a particular way very fun and very exciting.
That's very helpful, and I think you touched on a key point there about this whole idea of being relatable. And I think all advisors struggle with that, right? Ultimately, when you're trying to build a relationship with your client, the more you're relatable to them, whether it's from their background, their life experience, or their goals and objectives, I think the more likely that you're going to be able to build a relationship with them. And you've just perfected it at a different level here. For advisors that are considering serving a specialized clientele or a niche like you've done, what are some of the key elements that you think they should evaluate to determine if their niche is viable and sustainable?
Sure. I would look at, how many other advisors, and it depends on whether you want to work in a geographic area or nationwide, but how many other advisors are working within that niche and have that specialization. If it looks like, is there enough people in the field to be able to support that? Like, if you're get very specific on your niche, you may be looking at a very small subset of people, but I wouldn't let that discourage you. You just have to sit back and do that math, right? Your subset of people that you could work with is 100,000 people, which is a relatively small amount in the entire United States. That's more than one advisor could ever handle, right? So you could easily capture a very small percentage of that market share and still have a really viable business. If you did not work in the industry, I think it's extreme. Like if you never had a job, like if I never worked in nuclear power, but I wanted to focus on that, it would be extremely important to learn everything I could about that industry, right? What are the different jobs? What are the different levels, hierarchy of, if you're hourly versus a middle management versus an executive, learning the lingo. Because as you see, if you use some of the lingo in your communication and marketing, I think that helps a ton. But I just like specialization because it makes it so efficient,
right?
That if you are working in an industry, and in those industry, there's going to be maybe 3 or 4 powerhouse companies, you can learn their benefits inside and out, and you can be extremely efficient when you're working with clients. and effective.
No, I think that that's a great message. And to your point, the idea of having some credibility and knowledge of that niche that you're going to operate in is very important, right? I mean, everybody, every advisor may really love to want to deal with all the dentists that are out there because they have a lot of money. If your closest experience to the dentist is your annual checkup, you might not have that credibility or the relatability with that clientele that you're looking to build. But I want to explore one thing with you, Ryan. So, my sense, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that yes, you're starting to focus on your niche and you're getting hyper focused on that. But is it fair to say that over time, as you get known in your niche, that your clientele actually broadens perhaps a little bit beyond that niche? So, that nuclear reactor operator who might have come to you to begin with because you have this relatability factor, they might, because they like what you do and how you do it and the trust that they have with you, they may recommend family members or friends who have nothing to do with the industry, but who are still become clients of yours. Is that a fair assessment?
It's so fair, Sam. In fact, I was very surprised at how much that does expand. It started with maybe somebody reaching out from outside the nuclear industry, and we would have a conversation. They would say, well, I'm not a nuke, but I am a chemist. Does that count? Is that good enough? Right? Like almost like it was an exclusive club to join or something.
Right.
And
Right.
then it even went out to people who had nothing to do with nuclear power, maybe not even I would say a STEM career, right? A science, technology,
Yeah.
math. But the most important conversation we have, and there is a very specific conversation about, are we a good fit for each other? Because it really is. I am not in the mindset of I want every single person to work with this firm.
Right.
I think the right people should work here, and that just means that there's might be a better firm out there for them. So the conversation that we have is more along mindset, and are you an analytical person? Do you like charts and graphs? Do you like going into details? Are you more of a 50,000 foot view, high level type of person? And if they tend to lean a little more towards the delegator, like oh no, Ryan, you just do it. You just take care of it. Just let me know what you're doing. And they don't want to be educated along the way. And they don't want to see their, here's decision A, B, and C. And here's why we're picking A, but here's why we did not pick B and C. All of those things that are, kind of come with that analytical engineer mindset, then I would refer them out to another firm that I think is more appropriate for them. But that does excellent work. They just work with non-engineer, non-analytical types. Right. So it's just a better delivery of the message, right? Doesn't mean that they're better or we're better in either sense. So yeah, it does expand significantly. And then you just have to I think you should get more selective and just make sure you're qualifying people up front. And I don't mean qualifying for your firm. It's a back and forth. It's you qualifying them, but they should also be qualifying you on, is this firm the right fit for me in the way they deliver this message? And I think as an advisor, the average client out there looking around may not even know these types of differences exist in firms.
Right.
So we should educate them on, hey, there may be a better place out there for you just based on your personality, your career path, your whatever that might be, your position in life. So I do think that as the industry becomes more niche and more specialized and more, I work with this exact type of person or in a particular part of their life or their career path or whatever, everyone gets served better because you're working with an advisor who specializes in you.
No, I think that that's so bang on. I think that there's a tendency, especially early in the career, to try to take whoever is walking in through the door. And I think this is natural. But as you mature in the profession and you get known for what you do, I think there's a huge amount of value in what you've said, Ryan, that having the client qualify you and you qualifying the client, there's enough out there. The more that you get alignment in everything that you said, in their approach to their money, to their personality, to their objectives, etc., the better that you're going to not only take that client, but you're going to keep them for much longer. And to be honest, I think you're going to have both the client and the advisor are going to have more fun and enjoyment in that relationship because you're not butting heads all the time because, you think it's the glass is half full and they are saying it's glass is half empty, right?
Yeah, that's so true. I can imagine, if I'm presenting in the level of detail that I like to present, and, we have it's many meetings, especially for a retiree, somebody making the decision to stop working after 40 years. that's not a 1 or 2 meeting decision, right? It's a lot. Sometimes we have 10 meetings before they retire to make sure that we cover every aspect. That level, that depth would not appeal to everybody. So I can't imagine if I'm presenting to someone who's very much more of a big picture, high level, keep it at that, and their guys would glaze over. I mean, they would be as bored as possible, and they would say, this is too much for me. Why are we doing this? Where they could be with a firm that is very good at doing the presentation that they need. So I love it. I think that there's enough. I don't look at RIAs, like small RIAs, especially niche RIAs and things like that, as being in competition with each other. I'm in competition with nobody. There's nobody else doing, serving my industry exclusively. So I'm happy to send another RIA, someone that I think would be a good fit for each other, knowing that they're going to get served well, as long as they don't end up in the care of, let's say, one of the firms that are charging a whole lot of money and not delivering the level of service that I think is acceptable, right? So yeah, I mean, I think that it's more of all of us RIAs in this together.
It's a great way of looking at it, and I think you're absolutely right. Now, one of the things, as you say, and you alluded to it before, that you have this Facebook group that educates, etc., and so that's an element of branding. I think we, as an industry, need to get better at this, particularly, as you say, RIA, smaller niche players and independents. But what role do you think the branding has played in building that trust and credibility, within your niche? What did you learn in this journey? And what advice do you have for listeners on how they might be able to apply these lessons to their practice?
Yeah, it's make it feel. I think if you make the business feel like it's an exclusive club, which if you're working in a niche and you do stick to that, it would be, right? Not everyone is a good fit. Kind of that inherently, I think, sparks interest with the people that are a good fit, right? So if it's me and another firm next to each other, and you have, this other firm that will serve anyone. They're more of a local firm. Let's say it's your firm that's, on Main Street in the middle of your town, and they do a good job. They've been around a long time, right? There's nothing particularly, let's just assume they do a great job. But then you put me next to them, and I am a nuclear power plant employee for almost 2 decades. And I even may have held the same job as somebody that's walking in to work with me, right, at some point. And we know the same people in the industry. They know that I had a senior reactor operator license, which is not easy to obtain. That's a really, really, that's the hardest thing I ever did my entire life, was getting a senior reactor operator license. It is not easy, right? So there's a bit of credibility and at least a bit of, okay, I know that this person knows how to learn. So if you put us next to each other, I think that person will naturally gravitate towards me if they worked in nuclear power, and the person that did not and maybe lives in that, they'll naturally gravitate towards that other firm.
Right.
So it's like it almost works perfectly when you just set it up in that capacity, right? So I would tell anybody that's going to get in a niche market like this is go all in. Like, make your website, make your email marketing, make your Facebook pages or your LinkedIn messages or anything like that. Like, make them niche from the beginning and use lingo from the industry. Use little clues and little things that show that you cared enough to learn enough about that industry to put those details in your communications. Learn how to compare different parts of your processes to what they do in theirs. Like, I have a million different ways to compare the financial planning process to nuclear power, like all kinds of things that are just kind of metaphors that people like will easily click, right? So just go all in and don't expect immediate results, because it does take time for that message to come across clearly. Another thing that I would say has been probably one of the most successful ways that I've established credibility and gotten name out there and things like that is doing educational webinars without any marketing attached to it. So, when I was leaving nuclear power, I collected a lot of email addresses, and I told everybody, I will never ask you to come in for a meeting. I'm never going to bug you about where, what are you doing with your 401k? I saw you that you left this job. I saw you do this. I'm never going to do that. I'm going to send out educational content like new tax brackets and information about Medicare and, stuff about retirement income. And I'm also going to host educational webinars. If you'd like to attend, please come. Just realize I am okay with you consuming this content for eternity without expecting anything back.
Nice.
My only ask is, if you ever want to talk to an advisor, keep me in mind. Make me one of the 3 that you talk to. You should talk to 3. Right? And that in the beginning, I saw almost no results, and I thought that it was not being listened to, and it just wasn't, the message wasn't getting out there. Maybe get 1 or 2 people at a webinar.
Mhm.
And then eventually it got to the point where I realized that that content is evergreen, and I can use that going forward. I can, if I did a webinar on Roth conversions and now I have a new client, they want to learn about Roth conversions, I could say, hey, I'll teach you about it in a couple minutes, but if you want the detail, watch this 1 hour webinar. And they do, they watch it, right? It's fantastic. And then I realized that as people start to, you start to grow your audience and they consume new content, they go back and watch the old content as well. And the advantage of all this is that if somebody watches you produce really good content, and I don't mean high production value, I mean good content. I make the PowerPoint slides myself; they're not pretty. But if they watch you produce really good content for 3 to 6 months, you've established trust and credibility with them without ever having a conversation. And they may reach out and say, hey, I've been watching your content for 4 months. I'd like to talk. Great. Or even better, I'm a do-it-yourselfer. I'm going to do my own retirement. I'm never going to work with you, but I'm sending you my brother because my brother is looking for somebody.
I think that,
yeah, it's wonderful. Content is free content for the purposes of marketing without a marketing label or stigma attached to it has been the number one driver, I think, of my ability to establish a brand and get the name out.
That's so powerful, Ryan. You make a really, really important distinction. I think too many people think brand is this high pressure sales marketing type of approach. And what you've just demonstrated is that brand is really, when you boil it right down, it is your reputation on display for people. Yours was that you're not going to pressure people to come in and take you. You're going to provide content and material that is going to be relevant to that audience. And when they're ready, they're going to come and talk to you, or if not you, if not them, they're going to find somebody in their network that is. And I think to your point, if you're doing it because you enjoy it, if you're doing it because you're adding value, if you're doing it because you're making it relevant. And that's the other thing that you said that really resonated with me, that you are finding ways to kind of use the lingo, the metaphor to explain the processes in terms that your target market would understand. I think every interaction that you've got and every interaction that you make is just building that brand, right? Whether you realize it or not.
Absolutely. Content is, and it's fun. That's the best part about it. It's fun. It keeps you on your game as an advisor because you have to do the research and run the numbers and make, these presentations and things like that. And I make them very interactive, as in, like, I do a lot of things live, like within software. It's not just me flipping through a PowerPoint and reading it. If I'm inside of a tax software, inside of a planning software, doing things live, it's just a lot of fun. And then, I want to reiterate, like, how much you can use that content in the future. I did a webinar on Social Security and how does it work? Who should file early? Who should file later? What are the pros and cons? Just some basic information, right? But now the first thing I do when somebody turns 61 and a half is I send them and say, hey, you're on the brink of at least the possibility of filing for Social Security.
Right.
I know we've talked about this. Watch this webinar. And then let's talk. So they watch the webinar to get, and remember, nukes want information. They want the more, the better. So they will watch an hour webinar happily, even if they listen to it in their car or whatever it might be. And then they come to the meeting armed with information, and you have an amazing discussion rather than really educating on all the aspects that are in the webinar first. Then they have to think about it. Then you talk about it. So it just makes your meetings a lot more efficient too, to be able to use that content, in an evergreen fashion.
No, it's key what you mentioned. I mean, look, yes, it takes work to put this. Yes, you're going to have to stay current on what's happening. But in most cases, the type of content that I assume that you're providing are things that you would be using in your client meetings or your client discussions. So the work that you're doing and pulling it together, not only is it evergreen because you can use it down the road with new clients or new prospects, you are honing your delivery, if you will, of content that you would be using in one-on-one meetings in any case.
That's absolutely correct. And it's good practice too, because I will tell you, anybody that's getting into this business, your meetings and your delivery and your webinars and your all of these things 5 years in, 10 years in or whatever are not going to look like what they did the first 3 to 6 months or a year or whatever. I was terrible in the beginning at hosting a meeting because although I knew exactly what I needed to ask and wanted to ask about, you just don't have proficiency, right? So just go into knowing that, like, this is going to be just like taking on any new adventure, learning any new skill, it's going to be a little painful in the beginning, but you just need repetitions to get better at that, and deliberately try to get better. After the meeting, think about, okay, what went well? What did they say that threw me through a loop, and how can I be better prepared for that next time? What do I need to do better next time? What should I have had them say or bring or ask that we didn't? Just there's so many things you can think about, and then just keep, it's about continuous improvement, right? And then eventually you will just be good at it. One day I realized, I was like, looking back, I was like, I think I'm pretty good at this now, in a humble fashion, right? You're never great, because you should always be trying to get better. But I think I'm pretty good at this now. And then I look back at those early meetings and I'm like, oh my God.
No, but to your point, like, look, we're all that way, right? In anything that we do, whether this is sports or whether this is, when you start becoming a nuclear reactor operator, when you're an advisor, all of us go through this. I've heard this term, like the valley of despair or of ignorance, where we don't know anything. And, it's just those repeated experiences and learnings that get you better, that get you over that hump. And I think you made a really, really important point. And I think this is something that the military or the special forces teams do, the after action review, which is that you sit there afterwards and say, okay, exactly what you said, that meeting, what went well, but didn't go as well as I would have liked. What could I do better? What do I need to work on? And I think approaching it in that kind of process driven, mindful way to sit there, and it's not to beat yourself up because you screwed up in this meeting, but it's really to sit there and say, okay, what can I take away from this so that the next time I can be that little bit better than I was this last time. So I think that's really important.
Absolutely.
Ryan, looking back, what would you say has been the biggest challenge for you in building a niche focused business, and how did you overcome it?
Probably don't be so hard on yourself. I would say, if I worked in nuclear power for a very long time, I had a lot of great relationships. I had a good reputation. I had one of the most prestigious jobs in the industry. And even when I changed over and went and started this firm exclusively for nuclear power people, which was very specifically for them with a clear message and everything, there were people who still didn't choose me as their advisor from the nuclear industry. And that hurt. Mm-hmm. I didn't take it personal, like with them. It was more of like looking inside and saying, what did I do? Or why didn't that work? Or I know in my heart, I care about these people more than the vast majority, because I know them. We have a relationship, right? So why wouldn't they choose me, right? And that was hard. And in the beginning, the first year, especially when you see that happen a couple times, that can be very demotivating. That could bring it down.
Yeah.
And if you let that get you down to the point where you lose the big picture, you just have to remember that no matter what, people at the end of the day are going to make the decision they make, and all you can control is what you present to them. So if you put your best foot forward, you had some great meetings with them, you showed them a great value, your fees are comparable, like you're doing all the things you should be doing. If at the end of the day they make a choice that there's a better advisor for their family, might be a family friend, might be because they want somebody local, there's a bunch of different reasons. You've just got to take that and say, okay, I'm not going to get upset about that, but I do need to look at, was there anything I could have done better in that process? But other than that, that's the only stuff I'm going to worry about. I'm not worrying about their decision, because at the end of the day, that's their choice to make, right? So don't let that discourage you, because you also have to remember that if you're a new advisor, or if you're moving and, starting an RIA, or you're just focusing on a niche, in a new capacity or something, you're still new at that. And there may just be people that want to see, that aren't ready to commit to somebody that's that new at it. Right. So I would say, take like kind of the sports analogy to it, right? Like if you miss a shot, forget about it, right? Learn from it. What can I do better next shot? Whatever. And then just move on and just keep doing the work, and don't let anyone who, especially when you thought that they were going to become a client, like you're really confident, you're like, we're a great fit, we had awesome conversations, everything went perfect, and the next thing you know, they're like, I'm going to choose another firm. Just accept that that's part of the business, and don't let that get you down.
That's just such great advice, Ryan. And I think it's a really good reminder to all the listeners that, and they know it, but we all need that reminder that it is a long game. Right. And it's a numbers game. And if your technique is right, in bringing back that sports analogy, if your technique is right, if your practice is right, eventually you'll start hitting the shots on a regular basis. Right. And as you've now said, that some of the webinars that you did at the beginning, now you look and shake your head at, because they're not at the standard that you would put right now. But you couldn't be where you are today without have having those early webinars, et cetera, and those experiences. And I think every prospect meeting, every attempt at trying to win a client is going to set you up, good or bad, with learnings so that you can develop further in your practice and in your career.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, I can tell you a couple things about, even if you make your first educational webinar and no one watches it and it's not great, it's still better than the one that someone did not put out because they were too scared or they did not think that they had the knowledge, expertise, or their words were getting jumbled up. I mean, in the middle of my webinars, I always find, like, and this is a typical person who's an engineer who's good at math, there's always a spelling mistake on something. I usually fumble my words on 2 or 3 things. It's just a natural, but it appears genuine. You can tell when something's pre-recorded.
Right.
And I host them live, and if the dog barks in the middle of it, the dog barks in the middle of it, right? Like, things happen, but it also comes across because it is very genuine. And don't let all of those things keep you from putting it out, because I can tell you, if you don't do it, if you don't host the meetings, if you don't do the webinars, if you don't not willing to take a chance on some marketing or some communications or something like that, you're definitely not going to get better.
Well, this reminds me of, I think it was Michael Jordan that said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? So I think that's very much bringing it from a basketball kind of venue to financial advisory practice. A bad webinar is better than no webinar, right? Because you've at least put it out there and you can get better at it. Ryan, we're coming to the end of our podcast, so I have a few final rapid fire questions for you that I ask all my guests. So if you're ready. Number 1, professionally, what is the most important lesson you've learned over the years?
Always learn. Keep your knowledge high. Try to, and certifications are great because of the knowledge inside them, not necessarily just the 3 or 4 letters that come after your name, but the more you learn and the more second nature that the knowledge that you have, and you're able to portray that to clients and implement these, different strategies and things like that for people, I'd say that for me, that's number 1. Like, keep your knowledge up there and be willing to share that and talk about it.
That's so powerful. I think you're absolutely right, particularly in a world and an industry that is changing so rapidly, right? Number 2, what is one practical tip you would offer listeners keen on applying your insights?
I would say that offer something that someone else either isn't, or do it at a higher level. And for us, I would say that that's been tax planning. We have fully embraced, and I don't mean tax preparation, I mean tax planning, like actual asset location versus allocation, tax loss harvesting, Roth conversions, leaving money to the next generation in the most tax efficient manner as possible, right? That really resonates with people. So for me, I know it's super, that's the most practical thing you could do is learn tax planning, implement tax planning in your practice, and it will differentiate you from a vast majority of firms out there.
Awesome. Ryan, this has been a very insightful conversation. If listeners want to learn more about you or find your work, where do they go?
Yeah, you can go to towncapitallllc.com. On there is a bunch of stuff about the firm. You can watch some of the webinars that I was talking about in here. You can also find me at Ryan Townsley on LinkedIn. I post a lot of stuff on there. I'm not super active, not as active as I should be. Or also on Facebook, you can search for the same thing. So yeah, this has been a ton of fun, Sam. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. And I think this has been very, very insightful for advisors who are thinking about their practice and how to evolve it going forward. And as we talked about, it's perhaps counterintuitive, but you've been a great role model for how niching can work very effectively if you do it right. So Ryan, thank you very much for joining us today on the Future Ready Advisor.
No, it's my pleasure. And any advisor listening to this, feel free to reach out if you want to talk. Like, I will help you. I would help you learn or try to avoid the mistakes I made to help, to try to make your transition easier. Because everything I learned the hard way, and I would not recommend that for everybody. So don't be afraid to have conversations with me or whomever it might be, and come up with some ideas that you can use in your practice or soon to be practice. Yeah, but so please reach out if you need anything.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan.
All right, Sam, take care.
In this episode of the Future Ready Advisor, I spoke with Ryan Townsley, founder of Town Capital, who shared his journey from nuclear reactor operator to financial advisor, and how embracing a niche built his thriving practice. Here are my 3 key takeaways. Number 1, niche is not a limitation, it's a multiplier. Ryan's decision to serve nuclear professionals gave him instant credibility and relatability. Speaking his clients' language and understanding their work culture made his value proposition clear and allowed him to tailor services to their specific needs. Number 2, education builds trust at scale. By offering free, no-strings-attached webinars and educational content, Ryan built a reputation rooted in authenticity. His teach-first approach not only nurtures leads, but turns clients into brand ambassadors, all while sharpening his own expertise. Number 3, fit over volume. Ryan emphasized the power of mutual fit. Advisors should qualify clients just as much as clients qualify advisors. This ensures deeper alignment, better service, and long-term relationships built on shared values and communication styles. As Ryan shows, going deep with the right clients can be more powerful than going broad with many. Focus, educate, and connect, and the right clients will find you. Thanks for listening to the Future Ready Advisor. You've been listening to the Future Ready Advisor. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or a rating on Spotify, or share your feedback wherever you listen. Be sure to follow the podcast so you never miss an episode. For more insights on how to keep your practice future ready, visit www.samsivarajan.com. You can find the link on the show notes. There you'll find free tools and resources, along with exclusive bonus content from these podcasts. Thanks for tuning in, and I look forward to sharing more strategies with you in the next episode.